The Irish Hills are a great place to enjoy healthy exercise in beautiful scenery far away from the hassles of everyday life. Unfortunately, each year, hundreds of people who set out to enjoy these hills instead fall victim to one of the multiple hazards they pose and end up making 999 calls to mountain rescue. Don't let such hazards put you off going into wonderful places like this. Everyday life also poses hazards. They are different to hill hazards. Up here, you may be at risk from cliffs, but would be safe from motorway crashes, house fires, or mugging, to name just some everyday hazards. Because hill hazards are different, people new to the hills are often unaware of them, which greatly increases the risk. This video therefore starts by describing the hazards before explaining how to protect yourself from them. Mountain weather can be glorious, but it can also be much colder than the lowlands. Strong mountain winds can rapidly chill you and also the higher you go, the worse it can be. Compared to lowland areas, the higher Irish hills are typically about 5 degrees colder, have double the wind speed, and 3 times as much rain. Wind, cold, and rain combined can exert a strong cooling effect on you. If that happens in a place like here, which you can see is very far from any shelter, you will become dangerously cold before you can escape from the weather. I say dangerously cold because your body works hard to keep your brain and other vital organs at a temperature of 37 degrees centigrade, no matter how hot or cold the weather may be. Severe mountain weather can overcome these defences and cool your brain. If it cools it by only a few degrees, you will start behaving somewhat like a cold drunk. This is called hypothermia. You may behave irrationally, stumble, or slur your speech. Most dangerously, you may fail to take simple steps to stay warm. If, as a result, you continue getting colder, you will lose consciousness and then die. The risk is greatest when you do a long walk in bad weather on high hills remote from shelter. The risk is even greater still if your clothes are inadequate, or if you suffer an injury, or if you become exhausted due to attempting an excessively tough route or to getting lost. Prevent hypothermia by addressing these risk factors. Wear suitable clothing. Plan routes that are not too tough and that won't expose you to excessively severe weather. Keep your energy levels up by eating enough food before and during your walk. Avoid getting lost by learning how to navigate. Many people enjoy narrow airy ridges or steep terrain like this. Some of Ireland's more popular routes cross such terrain. The risks on such routes is generally low, provided the conditions are good. Beware, however, that a minority of regular hill walkers, possibly including some of your walking companions, are frightened by such terrain, and that the risk level can be much higher in adverse conditions. Let's imagine, for example, that you enjoyed going up this steep section on a fine summer day. The following winter, you descend it at the end of a tough walk. This time, however, you're all tired and in a hurry, and wet, windy weather and slimy footholds make things far, far tougher. You notice that one of your companions is clearly frightened. With help and coaxing, they continue descending until suddenly a rock is accidentally dislodged and falls hundreds of meters at high speed. This totally freaks them out. They refuse to move up or down. The takeaway message is that before planning to cross challenging terrain, think carefully about your companions, the conditions, and the circumstances. Even if the ground isn't steep, rough surfaces like this can cause injuries. Hill walking boots greatly reduce the risks posed by steep or rough ground. It's great to be remote from traffic, crowds, and other trappings of civilization. The downside is that you will be remote from the help and facilities we normally take for granted. If something goes wrong, you will need to be self-sufficient. For example, if you don't manage to finish your walk before dark, the lack of streetlights will make a torch necessary. If its battery is dead, there will be no shops in which to buy a replacement. Unless you had brought a spare battery, you may well have to grope your way down in total darkness. If you break a leg, or if a tough uphill walk triggers a heart attack, there may be no mobile phone coverage. The only way to get help may be for one of your companions to walk down to the valley. This can take a long time. By the way, despite this, always bring a fully charged phone because some parts of the hills do have coverage. An ambulance probably won't be able to reach you. If you are lucky, a helicopter will rescue you fairly soon after you eventually manage to raise the alarm. Unfortunately, you may well have to rely instead on a voluntary mountain rescue team to rescue you slowly on foot. The key point to understand is that you need to be prepared to wait a very long time for help to arrive. If you need urgent medical treatment, these delays could be life-threatening. A long wait on the side of a mountain in bad weather can be a recipe for hypothermia, especially if you are injured and in shock. Whether you survive till the rescuers arrive may depend on the first aid skills of your companions, the quality of your clothing, and the adequacy of your emergency equipment. Here are two examples of the type of emergency equipment you should consider carrying, namely a first aid kit and a bivy bag. When planning a walk, remember that some routes are far less remote than others, and thus less dangerous. If you have an accident while walking alone, there will be no companion to go down for help. This could prove fatal if you are unable to walk down and there was no phone coverage. You can reduce this risk by leaving details of your planned route with somebody who will raise the alarm if you fail to return on time, and by picking routes where other walkers are likely to come across you. Many parts of the Irish Hills have neither signposts, paths, nor passers-by from whom you can seek directions. This can make route finding difficult, especially in mist, which is common in the higher hills. Without appropriate skills and equipment, you can easily get lost. In some cases, this is merely inconvenient, but in other cases, it can be dangerous. You could wander onto dangerously steep ground or walk much further than planned, risking exhaustion and thus hypothermia. Skill with map and compass, called navigation, is thus vital for all walkers. You may be lucky enough to have a competent navigator as a walking companion. However, that is not a justification for avoiding learning navigation. You could become separated from them in mist, or you may need to go for help if they become injured. Some hill walking routes cross rivers using stepping stones like these. However, rain or melting snow can cause mountain rivers to flood, and when they do so, you could drown if you tried to cross them. Imagine you are descending off the hills after a long walk in heavy rain. You arrive at the river you must cross in order to get off the hills, only to discover that the same heavy rain which has left you wet and cold has also caused the river to flood. You consult your map, looking for a route that will get you off the hills without crossing the river, but discover that the possible detours are all too tough for your already tired group. You would be in a very dangerous situation. You should have avoided this problem by studying the map and forecast beforehand and changing your route accordingly. Snow is much more common in the hills than in the lowlands. It can be beautiful but also dangerous. If walking in the higher Irish hills in winter, you need to understand snow hazards and, where relevant, factor them into your walk planning. If you are not used to exercise and have a medical condition, a tough uphill walk could trigger it. Such an exercise-induced medical problem would be far more serious on a remote mountaintop than the exact same condition in, say, a gym. If you need medical help, it will take much longer to get it. Getting down under your own steam would require further exercise, thus possibly exacerbating the condition. Am I saying don't go hill walking if you're unfit or have a medical problem? Absolutely not. But do consider appropriate precautions, which might include consulting your GP, telling your walking companions about your medical condition, bringing spare medicine, and starting with walks suited to your medical condition and fitness level. If afterwards you want to be more ambitious, build up gradually and consider regular exercise between walks. To recap, the hazards are severe weather combined with hypothermia, steep or rugged ground, remoteness from help, getting lost, flooded rivers, snow, and possibly your own medical problems. Now that you understand the hazards, you can start protecting yourself. Before each walk, study your map and the forecast, and consider you and your companion's abilities, clothing and equipment. Then consider each of the hazards in turn and change your plans if you seem likely to fall foul of any of them. During the walk, monitor whether things are turning out as expected. If they're not, consider whether you need to turn back or otherwise change your route. When you first start doing this, it is likely to confine you to relatively non-challenging walks like that shown here. If you want to do more ambitious walks, while still staying reasonably safe, you need to acquire appropriate footwear, clothing, equipment and skills. I also recommend joining a hill walking or mountaineering club. A good club will lead you along routes that would otherwise be too challenging, teach you skills and provide benefits such as equipment discounts and insurance. It can also be very sociable. The clothing and equipment needed varies greatly depending on the route and on the conditions. Advice is available in textbooks, online, in specialist shops, on courses or from fellow club members. Here are some basic pointers. Wear proper hill walking boots. If you or your companions don't have boots, there are a limited number of routes where runners are reasonably safe. However, it's best to buy a pair of boots. Decide what clothes to wear by listening to the forecast, but remember that mountain weather tends to be worse than lowland weather, and thus worse than the forecast. Irrespective of the forecast, always bring or wear a jacket capable of keeping you dry in prolonged rain. Except on the very shortest walks, always carry a rucksack with an extra item of warm clothing, a map, compass, a whistle and a fully charged phone. This list gives an idea of some of the extra items you might need, depending on the route and on the conditions. The 3 skills you need are firstly navigation, secondly planning your walk so as to avoid emergencies, and finally the skills to cope with emergencies when remote from help. There are other useful skills, but focus on these 3 first. You can learn the first 2 of these skills, namely navigation and planning, by a combination of one or more of the following: books, videos, online tutorials, informal tuition during walks, or a course. I recommend a mountain skills course. Whatever way you learn the skills, be sure to practice them. For example, by following the route on the map, even when you're not leading the walk. A course is the only realistic way to learn the 3rd type of skill, namely emergency skills. I recommend a remote emergency care course. This is a first aid course suitable for mountain conditions. To find a club or learn about courses, visit mountaineering.ie. I'll finish by summarising 2 key points. Firstly, plan your walks to ensure they are suited to you and your companion's ability and equipment, having regard to the expected conditions. Secondly, if you wish to do more ambitious walks, acquire skills, fitness and equipment appropriate to the type of walks you want to do. I hope you found this video useful. Stay safe and enjoy our wonderful hills.